Takeoff occurred at 9:20 this morning.
This was a new fuel formulation, again, that had been proven and tested on the ground.
At approximately 10:12, we became aware of an in-flight anomaly.
One person who had obviously was deceased.
This is never easy when this happens. The entire community bonds together, comes together, and our hearts go out for the families, the friends, the loved ones, the deceased.
Good evening and welcome to 17 News at 5. I'm Tammy Melchak.
And I'm Jim Scott. We want to get right to the latest tonight on what we know about SpaceShipTwo's deadly crash in eastern Kern County this morning. One pilot was killed, another pilot injured during a test flight this morning at the Mojave Air and Spaceport. The injured pilot was taken to Antelope Valley Hospital for treatment. A command post was set up in the area about 4 miles north of Garlock Road just after the crash, just after the ship was detached from White Knight 2 that it rode to an altitude of about 45,000 feet. White Knight 2 landed safely. Both pilots were employed by Scale Composites. We have team coverage of today's crash tonight, from reaction to the craft's history and its mission today. But we begin with 17's Kiyoshi Tomono. He is live at Mojave Air and Spaceport, where Spaceship One is housed and Virgin Galactic is headquartered. Kiyoshi?
Yeah, Jim, actually, it's right behind me there. That's the Virgin Galactic hangar where Spaceship 2 and White Knight 2 are traditionally housed. Tonight, we believe it's just White Knight 2 that is inside that hangar. And, of course, the folks from Virgin Galactic, they are trying to regroup today. The head of Virgin Galactic telling us earlier that he's taking on a somber tone. They're trying to figure out exactly what went wrong, but he acknowledged this is a risky business that they're in, a business that eventually could allow people like you and me, paying customers, to take a ride into space. But tonight they're trying to figure out why their rocket ship fell from the sky.
Space is hard, and today was a tough day.
This is just one piece of what's left of Spaceship 2, the wreckage strewn across a 2-mile-long debris field.
We are going to be supporting the investigation as we figure out what happened today, and we're going to get through it.
Officials at Virgin Galactic and Kern County-based Scale Composites say the rocket took off from Mojave Spaceport around 9:20 this morning, nestled underneath the glider White Knight that carries Spaceship 2 to altitude. About 50 minutes later, Spaceship 2 separated from the glider and the pilots were set to fire the rockets into space when something went catastrophically wrong.
I detected nothing that appeared abnormal. I know I was briefed that the plume would look different this time than it had in the past, and it did.
Stu Witt is the CEO of the Mojave Air and Spaceport. He says he saw no explosion.
I knew when other things weren't happening, it wasn't because of something did happen. It was of what I was not hearing and not seeing.
This was a test flight. The goal is to prepare the rocket ship for suborbital trips to the edge of outer space. The most recent test flight was October 7th, but the spaceship wasn't required to fire its rockets then and glided safely back to Earth. Virgin Galactic's billionaire founder Richard Branson hopped a plane after hearing about the crash and was on his way to Mojave.
We expect that the NTSB will arrive approximately 7:30 tomorrow morning. We will spend a couple of hours putting together a game plan for moving forward as we continue the investigation, which we expect would take several days.
And we're actually, again, at the Mojave Air and Spaceport. The crash site is some 20 miles away from where we are. A lot of the people that were on the ground here at the spaceport didn't, as a result, see the particular crash. But I did have a chance to talk to a construction worker, a guy who was actually working far away from here. He didn't want to go on camera, but he said he looked up at the sky when he heard what sounded to be a boom and saw Spaceship 2 basically hurtling from the sky, kind of spiraling downward, which is traditionally the way that Spaceship 2 safely comes back to Earth. It kind of acts as a shuttlecock from badminton and slowly kind of circles its way back to Earth. But in this case, he said he knew something was going way wrong. It was coming down way too quickly. And then moments before it hit the ground, he said he noticed something, at least a sign of hope, a parachute that emerged. Somehow the pilot, that second pilot who was not killed, was able to scramble out of the vehicle in time. As you heard earlier, that pilot was taken by air ambulance here, by a helicopter, to an area hospital. hospital, where we understand tonight he suffered some severe back and shoulder injuries. The Sheriff's Department characterizing those injuries as severe to major. Reporting live tonight at Mojave Spaceport, Kiyoshi Tomono, 17 News. Tammy and Jim, now back to you.
Kiyoshi, thanks. Richard Branson, the billionaire founder of Virgin Galactic, sent out this message via Twitter following today's deadly crash. It reads, quote, "Thoughts with all at Virgin Galactic and Scaled. Thanks for all your messages of support. I'm flying to Mojave immediately to be with the team."
At the turn of the century, there was this buzz in Mojave about the coming age of space tourism, a time when privately held aerospace companies would transport civilians like you and me into space and break the bonds of Earth. In 2004, that buzz became a high desert roar as aerospace pioneer Burt Rutan and his Scaled Composites company put Mojave, California squarely on the space tourism map, capturing the coveted X Prize and proving the feasibility of the space tourism industry. Today's crash of SpaceShipTwo is a clear reminder of the mortal dangers of spaceflight.
Too much dihedral.
Burt Rutan and his Scaled Composites crew rattled the aerospace world on September 29, 2004, as pilot Mike Melville punched through the atmosphere above Mojave. Spaceship One in a corkscrewing climb into suborbit, reaching the required altitude of 62 miles in order to qualify for the $10 million Ansari X Prize.
We have nothing to fix on Spaceship One. There is no squawks on Spaceship One right now. There is nothing to fix.
5 days later, Spaceship One, with pilot Brian Binney at the controls, clinched the X Prize and made aviation history. For the first time, a privately built, fully reusable spacecraft had flown twice in 2 weeks into suborbit and returned safely to Earth.
If you'd have told me that we'd finish this program flying only 6 powered flights and 3 of them be space flights, I would have said, nah.
Scaled Composites and its stubby little space plane propelled a fledgling space tourism industry into warp drive. The newly named Mojave Air and Spaceport became a hub of feverish aerospace activity. Several of the industry's heaviest hitters expanded operations here as they looked to break the bureaucratic and technological restraints on commercial space tourism.
This is the Plymouth Rock of the new modern American space movement. This is where it starts.
And from this ground came the next generation of spaceplane built for tourism, SpaceShipTwo, now under the auspices of Sir Richard Branson and Virgin Galactic. 17 News was there when the larger, sleeker craft broke the sound barrier on its first powered test flight.
The first commercial space line to break the sound barrier on its very first test flight. Couldn't have gone more smoothly.
These high desert dreamers achieved much over the last decade, proving that space is no longer the exclusive domain of governments. Friday's tragedy also proved that spaceflight is inherently dangerous and can exact a deadly toll. You know, perhaps Virgin Galactic's George Whiteside said it best today. Space is hard, and today is a hard day. Mojave Air and Spaceport Chief Stuart Witt said, in many ways, the future rests on days like today, and we owe it to these people to understand it and move forward.
In the aftermath of today's tragic crash, there are questions tonight about SpaceShipTwo's new fuel source. 17's Jason Galvin is in studio now with more on what was powering SpaceShipTwo. Jason?
Well, Tammy, SpaceShipTwo uses a non-traditional hybrid rocket engine system, and today's fateful flight was the first featuring a new plastic-based fuel. From day one, SpaceShipTwo builder Scaled Composites and engine manufacturer Sierra Nevada Corporation designed the vehicle for use with multiple fuel sources. In May, Virgin Galactic CEO George Whiteside announced a new fuel was being tested. Today, Scaled Composites President Kevin Mickey emphasized tests had gone well.
We were flying a rocket motor today that had been thoroughly tested on the ground and had been through a qualification series And of course, we expected no anomalies with the motor.
SpaceShipTwo utilizes a hybrid motor, combining a solid ignition source with nitrous oxide in order to propel the craft. The first 3 flights were powered by a rubber-based solid known as HTPB. A fuel change was made when HTPB began burning unevenly. Today's use of polyamide, a more powerful but cleaner thermoplastic made from Kevlar and nylon, was the first in flight, but Mickey said the fuel change had no effect on the design of the engine.
A small nuance to the rocket motor design is the fuel of the motor. So this motor configuration had flown a few times in the past. This was our 4th powered flight.
Mojave Air and Spaceport CEO Stuart Witt has watched all 4 powered flights and said he detected nothing out of the ordinary during today's burn.
You know, if there was a huge explosion, it didn't occur. I didn't see it.
Now, officials declined to speculate if indeed polyamide may have been a factor in today's tragedy. The fuel change could, of course, simply be a coincidence, albeit it would be a terrible one. In the studio, Jason Galvin, 17 News.
Jason, thanks. This is the second space-related setback this week. On Tuesday, an unmanned privately built spaceship bound for the International Space Station exploded shortly after launch in Virginia.
And we have liftoff of Antares, the Orbit 3 mission, delivering Cygnus on its 3rd CRS mission to the ISS. Got main engines at 108%.
Avionics power nominal.
Orbital Sciences' unmanned Cygnus spacecraft exploded as it blasted off atop an Antares rocket a few seconds after liftoff from NASA's Wallops flight facility on Wallops Island, Virginia. The launch was to be Orbital Sciences' 3rd official cargo mission to the space station for NASA under a $1.9 billion contract, which calls for a total of 8 delivery missions. The robotic Cygnus spacecraft, also built by Orbital, was filled with 5,000 pounds of food, water, experiments, and other gear for the astronauts currently living aboard ISS. No injuries were reported in that explosion.
And stay with us here on KGET for continuing coverage of today's SpaceShipTwo crash. We'll continue to keep you updated here on 17 News at 5 and 6 as well, plus our website, kerngoldenempire.com, and our KGET Facebook page. We're putting every new detail there as soon as we can. Also, if you have video or photos of today's crash, we would like to see them. You can email them to us at 17news@kget.com.
Working in the spirit of the Golden Empire, this is 17 News at 5:30.
New at 5:30, we continue to follow the deadly crash of Virgin Galactic's SpaceShipTwo in eastern Kern County this morning.
That's right, and here's a recap of what we know this evening. SpaceShipTwo crashed about an hour after it lifted off from Mojave Spaceport this morning about 9:19. The explosion occurred about 2 minutes after the rocket motor engaged. The crash site is about 4 miles north of Garlock Road. White Knight 2, which carries SpaceShipTwo to an altitude of about 45,000 feet before letting go for the test flight, landed safely. The explosion scattered debris across a 2-mile swath of the desert floor outside of Mojave. SpaceShipTwo was testing its rocket engine with a new fuel for the first time in flight in more than 9 months. The flight originated from the Mojave Air and Spaceport. A news conference was held there this afternoon to talk about the investigation, reaction to the tragedy, and the future of space tourism.
Space is hard, and today was a tough day. We are going to be supporting the investigation as we figure out what happened today, and we're going to get through it. Future rests in many ways on hard days like this, but we believe we owe it to the folks who were flying these vehicles, as well as the folks who've been working so hard on them, to understand this and to move forward, which is what we'll do.
Been in this business a long time, and the industry that has chosen to invest at this phase of our career, and the new generation that is joining us, your age, extremely motivated, highly motivated, challenging, inquisitive people, and even though we have a preponderance of this new industry resident in Mojave, this industry is sprinkled around the globe. It is a borderless global industry that's interested in commercialization and much greater access to space. My message to them is stay the course. This business is worthy business. This is not easy. If it were easy, it wouldn't be interesting to me or any of my colleagues standing with us.
Our job continues. Immediately after locating the crash site, we set out with our partners to secure the crash site. That will continue to be the case overnight. We expect that the NTSB will arrive approximately 7:30 tomorrow morning. We will spend a couple of hours putting together a game plan for moving forward as we continue the investigation, which we expect would take several days.
The Federal Aviation Administration says 2 crew members were aboard, which is consistent with the standard practice of having 2 test pilots who are equipped, by the way, with parachutes. The pilots have not yet been identified. The flight was part of a long-running program to test SpaceShipTwo in preparation for suborbital paying trips to the edge of our atmosphere, suborbit. Virgin Galactic's development partner, Mojave-based Scaled Composites, has been playing a key role in the test program. Virgin Galactic had said the first trip to an outer space altitude, usually defined as 100 kilometers or about 62 miles, could have taken place before the end of the year, depending on how tests went. Now, of course, that date is pushed far back.
Congressman Kevin McCarthy released a statement this afternoon about the crash of SpaceShipTwo. The House Majority Leader says, quote, "My heart and prayers go out to the pilots of SpaceShipTwo and their families. Their courage and bravery to embark on missions that will lead towards expanding man's reach into space exemplify the ingenuity and imagination of America. Today's devastating crash is a reminder of how fragile life is in these efforts. I am confident authorities and Virgin Galactic are working diligently to learn more about the circumstances surrounding this tragedy."